So if you read the title of this video, which you must have if you clicked on it, you might be a little confused by what I mean by childhood woods, and I do want to clarify something real quick. When I say childhood woods, this isn't as interesting as it would be if I was some 40-year-old guy going back to a place I was in like 30 years ago, because I'm just a teenager going back to something I did like 6 years ago. So it's not as cool as that, but I'm not old, so what can I say? And also, this isn't something from my very early childhood, it's more so from my later childhood, because this all kind of happened, as I said, like, probably somewhere between 6 and 8 years ago. It wasn't really that long ago when I was a really little kiddo, but it still happened in the past, and it was my childhood, and I really appreciated this time, so I want to go back to it and just kind of talk about it in this video. So, a forest or the woods to any kid, I'm sure anyone could agree from when they were kids or relate, especially if you've lived near the woods or used to go to one. It's a very nice place for exploration and doing wacky stuff and hanging out with friends, especially as a kid. And I, for one, definitely engaged in some wacky stuff in the woods over the years. So that's why I want to talk about 3 different things that I did in the woods near my house that I used to do. That sentence was kind of weird. I didn't want that to come out like that. But 3 things that I did in the woods near my house over the years, because they're all kind of interesting stories, if I do say so myself. And later in the video, I'm actually gonna go to them so that we can all see what they look like now, because none of them are in their prime anymore, I should say. So the 3 things I want to talk about. The first, I don't know if you've ever seen it before. You might need to get a nice little stock photo or something to represent this, because I don't have any pictures to represent it and it's hard to explain. But when a big tree falls over, it rips up all of its roots out of the ground and it brings up a bunch of dirt with it. So it kind of creates this little trench in the ground. And in the woods near my house, a couple trees did this, or they had already fallen over, because I didn't witness them do it. It's just that there were always these big trees laying around, and they all had these little trenches in them from where they ripped the dirt up. So this one tree in specific, we used to just throw a bunch of garbage into it for some reason. It kind of became a tradition. Or I shouldn't really say a tradition, because it only happened, I think, at least 3 times, but it was still pretty fun for us and funny back then. The first time it happened, we took this little miniature bicycle thing, contraption, whatever it was. It was this little mini bicycle, but it was very small for some reason. Like, I've never seen a bike as small as this one, so I don't know who was supposed to be able to ride that. But we took a bicycle and we threw it into this little hole left over by this tree. I'm hoping future me is able to find a picture to represent this, or else this is probably
You'll
very
never believe it, I
awkward right
found
now.
a picture of a tree.
We put it in there and then we threw some dirt on top of it. And I'm saying we did, but it was actually my brother and my friends that did it, because it was my bike and they did it as like a prank to make me mad. And then I'm pretty sure they broke it too in the process of doing that, so we just left it in there, and I had to accept the fact that that bike was just thrown into a hole in the ground. But eventually, over time, we also threw, I believe at one point, some article of clothing. So I'm sure by this point in time, it's probably like decomposed down there or something, if clothes even do that. And also at one point, we put an entire Christmas tree in the hole, because we felt like putting it there for some reason. And then after putting those things in there, we might have put some other things in there here and there, but I kind of forget what they were. We eventually just piled up dirt, rocks, and branches onto it so that it would be like a little bridge, which was stupid because you could just walk around the hole and there's no reason to go over it. But we thought that was pretty cool when we made that. And as I mentioned earlier, it used to look pretty cool, and again, hoping I found a picture, when the dirt rips up out of the ground from the tree's roots, it creates this little semicircle of dirt that's like propped up against the base of the tree. we eventually kind of kicked all of that in too for some reason, which was sad because prior to that we used to sit on that little dirt mound or semicircle of dirt as a throne, and then one day we just decided to destroy it and add it to the little dirt bridge, and now it's just kind of unrecognizable. One day I maybe would like to try and dig up the bike and the Christmas tree that are hidden down under a ton, and by ton I mean a metric ton of dirt. That might be an exaggeration, I'm not sure, I don't know how much dirt weighs, but yeah, I'll show that off later. The other thing I want to talk about is this tree house we tried to build once, and the only picture I ever took of it during its building process and its completion and its existence was this one that I took on none other than a Nintendo 3DS for some reason. I think that's kind of weird because I don't think anyone else that helped took a picture of it either. So the only picture between, I think, like 5 of us kids that worked on it, no one took a picture on their phone, just me with a 3DS. Yeah. Anyway, one day we got together with some friends, me, my brother, and some friends. We wanted to build a tree house out of nowhere, and then we just kind of started doing it. And this was during the summer, some year, a couple years ago. And by a couple, I mean definitely more than 6, but I'm not exactly sure. It might have been 2015 or sometime around then. Is that even 6 years ago? Yes, it is. Oh, wow, that's weird. We built this treehouse, and it obviously was very bad because it was a bunch of kids doing it. We had some help from an adult, but not fully. And we were kind of the main guys designing it. We built the walls and everything, and we built a nice little ladder to get up to it. We had an adult build a swing for us on a separate tree near the treehouse, so it would be like a little playground. It all came together decently, or at least that's what we thought as younger kids. And I remember specifically we used blue paint to paint a lot of the features of it, and during that we kind of scattered a lot of blue paint around, so there's a lot of blue paint stuck on the trees around the area where that treehouse was. And at one point we cut a little mini tree down so that it was just a little stub sticking out of the ground, and I wanted to try and build a sign to kind of mark our territory. I believe it said something like the Sky Fortress on it as a cool little name for our fort, but it didn't work because I tried to nail it onto the little tree stump and it just didn't work for some reason. So yeah, that was unfortunate for me because I thought that would have looked pretty cool, but it never happened. I'm trying to think of any other notable things about the treehouse before I move on. I guess if I think of it, I'll probably think of it when I get to the actual showing off part. Anyway, the third thing is something that we did after we built that treehouse, because eventually that treehouse, it kind of started to deteriorate. It got moldy and a bunch of fungus grew on it because we used we used wood, so I don't know how you prevent that from happening, but fungus grew on it for some reason, so that was weird. But we had to take the treehouse down because we didn't want to watch it slowly fall apart. And then instead of just letting that wood continue to rot, which it would anyway, we reused it to build an actual house. Not a treehouse, but a quote-unquote house this time. So we used the wood, and this time we had more help from an adult because the adult had to lay concrete into holes in the ground to put up these support pillars for us to hammer a bunch of wood into. But in the end, we built this very disgusting, disheveled looking shack that had like 50% of a roof and a bunch of holes in the floorboards, and we never used it for anything really other than hide and seek a couple times, even though the original plan was to make a sort of man cave with functioning electricity and padded floors and everything. But that obviously never happened, and that was a shame. And if you couldn't guess, it looks terrible now, even worse than it did then, but I'll be able to show that off in just a few seconds here. Well, here we are, we're in the woods. I forgot that I had to be outside for this part, which doesn't make sense because I have to go outside to go outside anyway. Usually when I do these videos, if you've seen my recent ones, after I do that first part, and then I go into this face cam part here where I get more elaborate with this stuff, I'm usually inside at a desk. But now I'm outside, so there's a bunch of loud, annoying animal and leaf and wind sounds everywhere, so sorry about that. Also, there's the imminent threat that the boogeyman or some other eldritch creature jumps me from behind, so hopefully that doesn't happen, and hopefully the camera doesn't pick up some entity running around behind me. Anyway, I've arrived at the first landmark that I was talking about, which is the tree here. As you can see, it's just a knocked over tree, but in front of it, there's a big mound of dirt that I'm standing on here. And all of the dirt that's on the top here was what we knocked down from what was originally all propped up around those roots. But then it kind of, as I said, we knocked it all over. And below that dirt there, before we knocked the dirt down, it was just a bunch of logs and branches and other things, which I don't think a single one is even sticking out, which is kind of weird, except maybe that one, if you can even see that, it's barely sticking out. It's kind of a shame. I really don't know why we knocked the dirt onto it, because now it's gonna be really hard to get the bicycle and the Christmas tree and all the stuff we put down there if we ever want to go back and get it out, because it is under a lot of dirt and branches that's just been compacted over the last many years now. So that's a shame, but there's not much to really talk about here because it's just kind of this sad sight now with a dirt pile and a knocked over tree that's falling apart because it's been dead for so long. Alright, so as for that tree house, there's a few notable things. First of all, I don't know what that is. There's some weird alien species manifesting on these leaves, but this was that little mini baby tree stump that we cut down, or I guess it was a tree at first, and now it's sort of a stump. And as you can see, that split in it, that little line there, is where I would have tried to put the sign to mark our territory, but it never worked, and there's even a little rusty nail in it. The more important part, this lid for a slushy cup thing, one of us put it here way back when we first cut this down. This is only like a little stem of a branch, and even though we decapitated this tree and it should be dead, it lives on because this branch has grown over the years to make it impossible to remove this lid. And also there's blue paint on it, because as I said, everywhere around here just has random blue paint splatters for some reason, because we were going wild with that. Another thing worth noting, and again, I'm sorry for all the loud nature sound effects, in addition to this more blue paint here, there are a lot of rusty nails sticking out of the trees, which for me is honestly kind of sad looking back, just because thinking about what this was once part of and this nice tree house that we put so much time and effort to, and now all that's really left is just rusty nails like these. So it's kind of sad. Sorry, the camera was blurry there, but there's a lot of other nails all over the place here. And also, I literally did not notice this until right now. An entire tree fell over conveniently into the area where the treehouse was built, which is really sad. In between this tree, that tree, that tree, and that tree, this is where the treehouse would have been, in between these 4 trees, and a stupid tree fell over in between all of it. Of course, it doesn't matter because it's not here anymore, but like, this mini tree here also played a part in supporting the treehouse, and it got crushed and it fell over. And also there's blue painted nails stuck in it, so yeah. One last thing, which is honestly the most interesting thing I could talk about with the treehouse, because it's really the only big thing left behind, is the swing. Obviously it doesn't look like a swing, but it used to be between these 2 trees here. That's why there's a rope around it, and it was hung in between these, and it actually worked pretty well at first. It was just made out of a wooden plank hung up by ropes, and then one day one of us sat on it and it literally split in half somehow, and then it fell to the ground, and the branch that was supporting it fell, and now it's just here and it's rusting, and it's kind of sad to look at, but also kind of cool because it's a little artifact of the past, I guess. And also there's blue paint on it, because why not? So this here is the house we tried to build with the remnants of the treehouse that I talked about earlier. And as I mentioned, since the treehouse was already falling apart and getting overgrown with mold and fungus when we took it down, this was never bound to work, and clearly it didn't, because all the walls have fallen over. We never even finished it because there's only like 25% of our roof. There's leaves everywhere. The floor is caving in. It's just the most goofy arrangement of wood possible. You have some weird like fiberglass thing there, an entire door here. It's all over the place. And one random fact I want to point out about this is that about a year ago now, I actually part of a video I filmed last year was set in this thing. So this is probably the most important thing this thing has ever done, which was being the set of part of a skit I filmed a while ago. Yeah. So for anyone that could actually put up with all of that nature noise in the background for that long, I want to say thanks for watching. Consider liking, subscribing, and whatever, watch my other videos, all that. At the moment, my channel is kind of geared towards making nostalgia or memory-based videos where I go back to stuff from my childhood, but also try to make it not too specific so that people can at least relate to it in some way. So yeah, thanks for watching.